Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coast Talks for September 2023. My name's Jason Goldsworthy. I'm the Executive Director for Coast and today's host and moderator. Before getting started, I just want to acknowledge that we're hosting this from the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, today known as the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. For those of you who aren't aware of Coast, Coast is the Centre for Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies, and we're developing a hub for innovation and skills development on BC's Pacific Coast. We're here to help industry find new commercial solutions to key challenges. We support startup and new ventures, commercialize innovation. We engage with Indigenous leadership through ocean innovation and attract talent, capital, and partnerships to grow businesses in British Columbia. Today's topic is accessing funding or investment for blue economy ventures. British Columbia generated more new Oceantech startups in 2022 than any other Canadian province. This is an indication of how much interest there is in capitalizing on the $3 trillion ocean economy. We're also seeing increased opportunities in clean energy, decarbonisation, data capture, AI, and autonomous vessels. However, funding is vital if these entrepreneurs are to thrive. But where and how can they access it? Today's panelists are here to discuss some of the different levels and options of funding and investments available, from diluted to undiluted and private and public investment. We have four fantastic panelists. We have Reece Pacheco, he's a partner with Propeller VC, Jennifer LaPlante, the Chief Growth and Investment Officer at Canada's Ocean Supercluster, Todd Sayers, the Deputy Executive Director for BC's BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy, and Blake Bunting, who's the co-founder and Director of Business Development with Goparity. We're going to hear from each of our panelists first for a few minutes to introduce what they do and how they can support ventures in the blue economy. And then towards the end, we will have some questions and a moderated panel session. First up, we're going to hear from Reece, who is the partner at Propeller. He focuses on investing in and supporting ocean entrepreneurs at the earliest stages of their ventures. Previously, he held a dual role as SVP for Ocean Responsibility at the World Surf League and Executive Director of WSL Pure. He has also led global conservation campaigns in partnerships with premier NGOs and global brands. We're very happy to have Reece join us today, and I'll hand the floor to you, Reece. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. And it's weird actually to be going first because, venture capital is the last form of capital you should seek. You should do all the other forms of capital first, then go for venture or project finance maybe last. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to share what we're up to at Propeller. And hopefully this is helpful to some of the future founders out there. I'm a partner of Propeller, and Propeller is a venture fund. We exist to accelerate ocean climate companies. We call these companies narwhals. That's our version of the Silicon Valley unicorn. So we're looking for, and hopefully there's some future narwhal companies in the audience here today, but we're looking for founders who are trying to address the climate crisis and/or biodiversity crisis, leveraging the additionality, scale, permanence, abundance of the ocean, or tackling one of the problems within the ocean, and going after a massive market, because we believe that the biggest impact and positive impact we can have for the planet will come from repeatable, scalable business models. Historically, the ocean has been underfunded and/or funded by philanthropy and government and oil and gas or defense, not necessarily the most risk-taking forms of capital who can try to help us decarbonize. And the ocean is key to reducing emissions and drawing down carbon, and we see a lot of technology tailwinds that are very exciting, thus the formation of Propeller. Our team is unique in the way we've brought a few different skill sets together. We have everything from my brilliant partner, Dr. Julie Pullen, climate scientist, oceanographer. She's super stellar, super well known in the space, to Brian Halligan, who is the founder of HubSpot, a very successful software company, a unicorn, if you will, and our partner, DevDut, who has invested in a number of unicorns as a VC for the past 15 years. My partner, Rodrigo, who just joined us, where we stole him as the founder of Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund, and my partner, Steven, who's been both an operator and an investor in my background, you just heard. So it's a unique team with a bunch of different sort of levels and experiences all coming together to help advise and help build the startups that we're working on. We invest across three areas of the ocean. I know everyone who works in the ocean here is going, the ocean's way wider and way deeper than you can possibly fit into three themes, but ocean carbon removal is a super important theme for us. We have a number of investments here, and ocean organics is your biology stack. So it's essentially thinking about anything that touches microalgae, macroalgae, alternative proteins, seafood, et cetera. And then industrials would be decarbonization of the maritime industry, technology to bring the offshore wind industry online more quickly, stuff like that. So to do this investing, to talk about our capital stack, we are a venture fund. We are an early stage venture fund. We invest at the pre-seed, seed, and Series A stage. So we're not quite the very first check given to a founder when they just have an idea. We like to see something has been built, there is some traction or some science has been proven out, and now there's a reason to raise funding to scale the engineering and build out the product and get customers. Typically our ticket size is 500K, that's US dollars. So 500,000 to $1 million is roughly where we're ranging. We typically join a syndicate of investors. So we're following on to some other investor who has led the round and set a price, and we're joining in and bringing our expertise in the ocean. And one other note on funding is that every VC fund has a investment period and a fund lifetime. And so most funds are like a 3-year investment period and a 10-year lifetime. That's when they want to see a return by. We've extended ours to a 5-year investment period and a 12-year fund life cycle, because we know that some of the stuff we're investing in is kind of deep tech, hard tech, and it's going to take a little longer to get traction. We do one other thing that's kind of interesting. It's not an accelerator program. It's more like a boot camp. It's called the Ocean MBA. It's for founders who are at the earliest stages of their ventures. And we've run 3 cohorts of this. It's super fun. We bring in smart folks from NOAA and from other ocean organizations. We bring in amazing founders or operators like this. In the lower left is Rich Miner, the founder of Android. And we mix them up for a couple of days, beat up business plans, poke holes in it, come back with feedback. And if we love what folks are doing, we'll invest. And so this has been a really fun way for us to help build ocean entrepreneurship skills in the overall ecosystem, and also help pull deal flow for us, because we get to know these founding teams really, really well. So it's really, really fun. We've invested in a couple of Canadian startups to date, but none out of BC. So I'm happy to be chatting here today with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Reece. I forgot to mention at the start there as well, if you've got any questions, please add them to the Q&A section. We'll be coming back to all our 4 panelists at the end. And if you've got any specific questions, or I'm sure lots will have, please add them to that and I'll make sure to get them across. Next up is Jen LaPlante. Jen is the Chief Growth and Investment Officer for Canada's Ocean Supercluster. As an AI leader with an MBA and an MSc in computing and data analytics, her career is focused on data analytics and technology, most recently driving economic growth through increased comprehension and adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning at deep sense. Wow. All right. Jen, maybe you can explain that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Jason. Happy to be here. And I'm going to share a little about the Ocean Supercluster, but Jason just referenced artificial intelligence, and today was a really big day for the Supercluster. We just announced $20 million worth of projects and investments in AI, ocean AI specific topics. And I'm going to touch on what we do as the Supercluster and how our funding model works and how we support companies. So the Ocean Supercluster is one of 5 superclusters across Canada. We actually just started our new 5-year mandate. And so now that we're moving forward, our goal is to really help drive and grow Canada's ocean economy. We're a member-led organization. So we have companies that are partners and members within the OSC. We're up to about 500 members right now, and it spans all across Canada and around the world. And what we're doing is trying to bring people together and support an ecosystem that allows for companies to grow and to thrive and to find commercialization opportunities and collaboration. Because we are a program that is funded by the federal government, even though we're not for profit, we invest in companies. And the biggest piece for us is that it's non-dilutive investments in companies that allow them to take on high risk projects that might be a bit of a technology opportunity for them to explore, but might be a little bit hard for them to go and invest in on their own. And so we partner with those companies and we invest in their projects. And the part that's really important for us is we are trying to drive overall growth of Canada's ocean sector. And the way we see it is by investing and working with companies, creating ecosystem partnerships, driving other pieces I'm going to touch on, we really can continue to drive Canada as a leader in the ocean economy. We have goals set out for 2035, and we would like to see, and essentially it's a 5 times growth from 2020, where we're going to grow Canada's economy to $220 billion of GDP. Because we've just started a new 5-year mandate, we've identified a couple of key themes or growth investment areas for us: scaled ocean energy, sustainable seafood, future of transportation, and then climate solutions. And the biggest area of opportunity in our ocean sector right now is around energy production and renewable energy sources coming from the ocean. I think the biggest challenge you have here is where regulatory challenges are kind of a bit of a challenge. You get into supply chain issues, but we're trying to support the development of net new technologies that can be deployed here. And then also the supply chain development that has to happen to support the future of where we generate our renewable energy from in Canada. We just heard a little about sustainable protein from Propeller. Well, this is also something that's really important to us. So seafood is where 3 billion people in the world get their food, their proteins, and people eat shellfish and seafish and algae. And we look at what the aquaculture space looks like, and we know we need to continue to invest in sustainable methodologies for us to harvest the ocean and make sure that we're doing it in a fair, economical, friendly, and long-term sustainable way. Transportation, I'm sure people have heard that, the numbers of 90% of the goods you touch come across the ocean, but that also means that we have to focus on how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We can improve the way goods are shipped across the ocean, and we can optimize. And we're really looking to invest in solutions like that. And then climate, this can include things like decarbonization, carbon removal, human adaptation, coastal resiliency. I am based in Halifax, which is the land of the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And one of the things that we've faced in Nova Scotia in the past couple of years has been very, very catastrophic storms that have caused a lot of damage, coastal erosion, loss of lives, and just the overall general theme of what we're seeing across Canada. And so some of the things that I think are important for us to think about, we're talking about investments, but what we needs to be invested in. And I think when it comes back to the problems that we face in the world, these are the things that people like us as investors are looking to invest in, things that can have a material change in the world. We're also really important to us is our Two-Eyed Seeing initiative. And so one of the last things I'm going to touch on before I pass it over is the Ocean Supercluster is heavily invested in initiatives that also ensure there's inclusion of diversity in projects. So as companies are looking to create new solutions, it's ensuring that they themselves either come from or have partners with Indigenous communities and have a great diversity on their own teams, because we want to ensure that the right people are coming to the table to talk about potential solutions. And we know that has a real long-term opportunity for that commercial outcome. And then talent. We spend a lot of time talking with organizations across Canada to ensure there's the right talent. I did announcements today talking about artificial intelligence. So we think that's really important for companies to ensure they have talent in the AI space. But we also think about the investments that need to happen in talent as we change and modernize and digitalization comes forward. How do we ensure that people have the right skills to be able to adopt and change? And how do we ensure that companies have the right talent to help them grow? And so as the Ocean Supercluster, these are the things we invest in that are outside of actually just investing in companies. And I look forward to answering any questions and having a great chat today.
Thanks, Jen. That was fantastic. And yeah, I'm hoping we'll get those questions happening and get some discussion happening after the next two speakers. Next up is Todd Sayers. Todd is the Deputy Executive Director for BC Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy. Todd's has got over 2 decades of experience in energy systems across all value chains, leading small teams to extraordinary results. His work focuses on sourcing and supporting energy transition opportunities, looking to expedite innovation in affordable, secure, low-carbon energy solutions for BC and the world. Welcome, Todd, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jason, very much for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you're joining from. I'm joining today from Vancouver, the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And yeah, I help lead the Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy based in BC. So the center has been around for just over 2 years, so we're really starting to get going. But it is a unique formation. It's a member-funded organization, and it's a combination of private and public funds. So there is industry. Shell Canada, along with the governments, both federally and provincially, have created us. So we have an initial $100 million investment to really help scale BC-based solutions. Clean energy solutions as well as climate solutions. And we do that across 4 strategic themes. So I'm going to highlight those quickly and then get to our aspirations in the ocean space for the subject of today's call. But we also provide non-dilutive grant investments into innovation at the early stages, like Reece was highlighting as well, and Jennifer. And TRL 4 to 9, we like to understand that the concept is understood and is really trying to scale. But across low carbon fuels, it was one of our focus, across low carbon hydrogen solutions, as well as carbon management overall, and battery and energy storage. So typically our investments are around, they average about $650,000 or so 500 to $1 million. We do have requests larger and smaller, but we'd like to lead the investment. So we have an internal due diligence process. We'll work with proponents to understand their ideas and where they're at. And we will put kind of CIC funding at the front, so you can then leverage that and attract other forms of funding. But we do like, again, shared investment on the risk profile. So from other funding organizations, but that's how we typically support some of our portfolio solutions. So we go about innovation across those 4 strategic themes and have a directed component. So we spend a lot of time on intelligence informing what the areas of innovation we may pursue. And we think it's really important to help define what the problem or opportunity is, and with a wide, diverse set of perspectives from industry, academia, governments, indigenous, as well as the innovators. That is one of the incredible things when you're working with what the ideas people have that they're trying to commercialize. The data points you get from that on what's actually happening and how you can help remove barriers is so insightful to us as a team. And we use that then to think differently around what problem can we solve and how can we use our limited resources for investment, but also convening. So we like to bring other people in and share those data points on how can we participate and collaborate better to help scale some of the ideas that are out there. Our future endeavor is to not only invest in the innovators we know that exist today, but understand where the future innovation is going to be required. And oceans and ocean CDR is exactly one of those areas that we're really turning our focus to. And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation today to understand more about the opportunities that are out there, as well as across the panelists to understand how we can help put the pieces of the jigsaw together a bit differently as well. We are focused on VC-based companies, but to decarbonize VC, but we really want to find solutions that can scale to the world. So really excited to be here today and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Todd. Last but by no means least is Blake Bunting. Blake is the co-founder and director of business development at Canada's newest impact finance platform, Goparity Canada. Goparity connects citizens with organizations promoting projects that contribute to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Blake co-founded Goparity Canada as a university student, scaling up from startup to operating within 3 years. Handing it over to you, Blake.
Thank you, Jason, and great job, by the way. I think it's great. You've grouped together a good diverse set of options for a lot of organizations that I hope are in the room right now. Just seeing we've touched on equity at the beginning, then non-dilutive debt-based financing, as well as some grants, and I will finish it off with another debt option that could be relevant to your organization as you scale and grow in the blue economy. So I'm the co-founder and director of business development here at Goparity, and what we are is an impact finance platform and app that connects investors directly to sustainably aligned organizations and projects. We're a global organization, and we provide financing to for-profit and nonprofit organizations under the scope of what we do kind of as a first step is confirm that the project and the use of funds will be contributing to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So far, our community of investors is, I think it's actually over 40,000 now. We've raised about $41 million through our platform, and this has gone to a bit over 300 different projects. And most recently, this kind of where Jason said newest is we've most recently come to Canada, actually just the beginning of the summer, to bring this model here. So how we deployed this model is with something called crowd lending. And what that means is we simply group a large number of investors, capital, small contributions of capital, into a single large contribution of capital. We then take that large contribution of capital or loan and finance a project or an organization that will repay that loan plus interest over time back to the crowd of investors. Our platform covers kind of the whole scope of financing, from due diligence to communications to contracts to transactions, all online and remotely, and makes it kind of more efficient than ever with the technology we have to make deals with a large number of stakeholders. And what crowd lending is effectively doing is removing the financial institution middleman. And what that means is we can lower the cost of capital for organizations seeking financing, as well as often reduce the time to money. And what we've been really focusing on is in Canada is this allows us to target the underserved market of sustainably focused SMEs, as well as some of you might be familiar with this emerging term, social purpose organizations, or SPOs. It allows us to focus on these organizations that traditional financial institutions haven't been excited about financing for a while due to their overhead. And beyond that, what's really exciting about crowd lending is we get to tell the story of the businesses that we work with to a large community of individuals and organizations that are investing in you both for a return, but also because they align with your organization and believe in you. These could be customers down the road. These could be partners. These could be co-creators. It really depends. And to raise this money, one thing that we do kind of uniquely in Canada is we really focus on that marketing aspect and getting your story out there, because we believe the stories on our platform are really worth telling and get people really excited. So beyond just a financial option, it also is a means to bring a lot of visibility to your organization. So we focus actually in 5 different categories, with blue and water economy just being one of them. But in the blue economy, we have a lot of experience overseas, mostly in Europe, working with different clam farms, a lot of different shellfish producers in the aquaculture sector, as well as a lot of really interesting algae-based solutions, as well as some nature-based solutions that have really been showing kind of the success that they've had overseas. And really because of that, we're able to keep kind of our scope quite large. So if we can quantify a positive impact on the environment or on the social side of things, it falls into the scope of our organization. And one thing I'll just say to kind of be really clear, I know we've talked a lot about seed funding at this stage, and I'm sure a lot of your organizations are in the kind of startup phase, maybe the pre-revenue stage. With debt, at least on our platform, I can't speak for the other lenders here, but we really focus on, and a big barrier for us to finance organization is we usually need to see recurring revenues, or at least a means to kind of project a payback in the near future, whether that and with some sort of confirmation. So if we can look at historic evidence of revenues, that's a really strong starting point. But there are also some other means, whether it's advancing grant or public funding, or even in some cases basing it around service contracts or purchase orders and different things like that. But really our debt is less so kind of a seed funding allocation of capital just to grow your business, period. It's for specific projects within your organization with a specific use of funds. So I'll stop there to give us a bunch of time to collaborate and chat, but I look forward to answering any questions on crowdlending and Goparity. Thanks.
Thanks, Blake. That's fantastic. And I will thank everyone just briefly for spending their time and giving a little bit of an introduction to each of your organizations. If I could get you all to put your cameras back on and microphones ready, I'm going to start off some questions. I'm hoping we'll get some from the audience, which we haven't got as yet, but please, this is a good chance for the participant or the people on the call to ask these people the questions you'd like to know the answers to. I'm going to actually start with a question that is actually something that came out of Reece's talk, which was previously you mentioned that the ocean sector has previously been unfunded, or historically has been underfunded, unfunded, not right word, underfunded. Yes, I'm going to open it up to everyone. I just want. Why do you think that may be the case, and what can we do about changing that? Maybe we'll start with you, Reece.
Sure. It's a complicated place to do business. You're at least speaking in US, you've got like state, federal, and then you go ABNJ, areas beyond national jurisdiction. And so like the rules of the road of what you're doing in and around the ocean, I think sometimes scares investors away of like, okay, there's a regulatory framework that may or may not exist. So right now there's lots of investment going into ocean carbon removal, and there's still a bunch of murkiness around what those rules might look like about where you can do whatever form of ocean carbon removal or sequestration you're trying to do. And certain investors are investing in that space because they're comfortable with that level of risk and believe that they're skating to where the puck is going. Other investors historically, I think, may not have been as comfy with that. I think there's also some just technology, for a long time, it's just big and expensive to do anything in the ocean. And so that was resigned to the governments and nonprofits of the world who could spend money over a long time to develop technology to build the hardened sensors that they needed to do it. But now the cost curves have come down so much that you can deploy sensors really cheaply and collect data, or you can build an AUV or a USV that is cheap enough that you can go deploy it yourself and start running missions to, provide a service to somebody. So there's some just kind of like macro trends on costs that are enabling people to operate out in the ocean like we haven't before. And then the final point I'll make is I think everyone has realized that the ocean is really critical to the climate crisis and we need to figure it out. Like there is no choice but to figure out how to get as much data as we can, and how to farm it as effectively as we can as a source of protein. So it's kind of knocking on our door that we have to get there.
So I mean, it's something that definitely we need to find a solution to. It's how to release or get the funding that we need to, and the support financing. Does anyone anything else to add to that?
Go ahead.
This is going to happen a couple times, I guarantee it. One thing I think in terms of changing landscape that Reece is saying, I think absolutely people are seeing climate change is prevalent. It's hitting everyone. It's hitting us in ways we probably could have foreseen, but didn't really seem to act on. But I think the other thing about ocean is no one owns it. And I think the lack of ownership is the biggest challenge for it. So if you have a land-based asset of something, you have a road, you have trees, you have something, who owns that. As soon as you get out in the water, suddenly you don't have ownership of. And I think that's been one of the biggest barriers too, because if no one is going to be investing in cleaning it, monitoring it, taking advantage of it, then it's really hard to go and produce some kind of product that's going to be sold to do those things.
Yeah, and like the transboundary effects of, you might even have a lease to operate in a certain area, but any number of things can pass through your area, right, across the surface or underneath the ocean. That happens on land too, with things coming across in wind and invasive species and stuff, but it's in the ocean. I think it's even more front and center.
Maybe Todd, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, I was just gonna. So I agree with Jennifer and Reece's. Those are the key barriers of, I think, in the past. Just to emphasize a few of them, I think the social acceptance of what we're trying to do is a big barrier, and so that is one of the things we're looking to understand. How can we use actual tangible examples and bring everyone along, Indigenous regulators, everybody, to really have a thoughtful, methodic approach to proving out and creating confidence in some of these. We all know how the risk involved there. I think as well, the path to commercialization and the CapEx involved has been so great. So it's good to see costs come down. You know, we look to understand what other opportunities are there for proof of concepts, but beyond proof of concepts, then how else can we bring people together to really advance some of these as well? Because to the points made, this is a solution we all need to focus on for as part of a climate solution. So yeah, I agree with a lot of those points, but the social acceptance piece we see moving forward, and that's how we're trying to help even slow down and understand some of proof of concepts, how we bring people along earlier stage and on those as well.
Okay.
I think, Todd, to your point as well, kind of from the social lens and the consumer lens, there's been a lot of kind of learning from Canadians, of especially in kind of the fisheries and the seafood industry, that has painted some negative light, has kind of caused some polarizing looks into these industries. But I mean, in the last few years especially, there's so much excitement in the startup space. I'm here in Halifax, but also in British Columbia. It is a hot sector right now, and I think it creates a really great opportunity to shed a lot more light and visibility on all of the truly impactful, truly sustainably aligned, as well as socially aligned projects that are kind of in the pipeline right now, up and coming, and that I believe that Canadians are really excited to learn about and would be very fascinated by.
Okay, I'm going to take what you mentioned there, Blake, about lots of startups, and the startup space is growing, and there seems to be a lot of that new IP coming out, especially in an emerging market like the blue economy and the ocean sector. A lot of you guys in your presentations talked about scaling and helping companies scale. So I just want to know from your perspective, where do you see those challenges? We've seen a bit of feedback saying that scaling is hard, it's difficult to get that first, device or first small market. But where do your organizations look when you're looking at funding companies about what their scaling plan is and how to support them on that? Maybe Todd, can I come to you first?
Sure, yeah. So the first thing we look at is what other sources of funding they have as they're kind of continuing along the de-risking piece. But we've talked about all of the different stakeholders that are going to be involved in some of these solutions. So the degree that they have devised proof of concepts or projects or their companies around local stakeholders that are required, both in whatever the solution is, whether it be biotic, abiotic, but the degree they've involved local testing and validation, so that kind of first level of sensor technology and the foundational data. But then they've also brought in other local suppliers of different sources. If it's an ocean alkalinity enhancement, the degree they can help with that social acceptance piece too. We see scaling not only in the options for funding scale, but also bring together a bit more of an industry around some of their solutions.
Okay, maybe Jen, have you got anything to add to that from the Ocean Supercluster?
Absolutely. Definitely understanding a little more around how they're going to execute is really important. But one of the things that differentiates the Ocean Supercluster from other programs like maybe NRC, IRAP, is we require companies to come together as a partner. And if you're coming forward and we're investing with you in a project, there needs to be at least 80% of the contribution of industry dollars coming into this has to come from, or at most 80% can come from one company. So what we found is if it's the balance is off even more than that, you have one company who really dominates. And because we're requiring companies to have a partner or a collaborator or a future customer or something in that development lifecycle of their project we're working with them on, we find that really helps flesh out that piloting or the development of MVPs, moving that TRL level up, because you have to have someone coming to the table who also has a vested interest in the development of this. And sometimes having two people working together or three groups working together opens more doors. And then, of course, the other thing for us is we're increasingly trying to support those initiatives through other partnerships. So there's a great mass program that's happening with NRC, DFO, Coast Guard, Transport Canada, and we're increasingly trying to find ways that we can allow opportunities for exploring regulatory options, trying to facilitate access to data or systems that might not have happened otherwise. And I think some of this is around people learning about opportunities to collaborate with some of us on this call, so they can find ways that might help them get a new opportunity to test and pilot and try and scale whatever it is they're working on.
Okay. Reece, anything from Propeller on where you're looking at that scaling opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it depends is a great answer for pretty much all of these. It depends on what you're building. Like, obviously software scales really nicely. Hardware is more challenging. Are you trying to build something that requires a lot of land on a coastline, et cetera? So it all depends. We are a very risky form of capital, and we just have to accept that there are certain risks, but to the point that founders can show that there are folks who believe in their vision. So letters of intent from potential partners down the line or future customers to show that, hey, yes, we have looked at this and we have said that we would buy from them, or that we would allow them to operate on our vessels, for example. There's just certain stuff that is happening in the ocean that requires incumbent industry or big, heavy, hard processes to adapt. And so we tend to try to find founders who have talked to those folks and tried to validate that that is not going to be a blocker for scaling. Unlike software, where it's kind of like write your software and just sell it anywhere, you need to go out and talk to these industries, whether it's shipping or desal or energy folks with pipelines into the ocean or out of the ocean. So that's a big piece of it. What can you do as a founder just to kind of pre-validate that scaling issue will not be a problem for whatever scaling your business needs to do?
Okay, I'm going to take that and ask Blake a more specific question about yours, because as you mentioned before, you like to see that recurring revenue before you work through the funding or the debt financing. Is there an opportunity for founders to have complementary technology, and if they're building something out larger, they could have a smaller market that's building to bring in revenue that they could be used to then fund or take the debt for the larger sort of end goal? Todd talked about other complementary technologies in this. That's not just the end goal. There's lots of other options out there. Is that something that Goparity considers part of the revenue stream?
That's really interesting you asked that, and completely, yeah. So when our kind of risk analysis and how we look at organizations, I'm sure is very different than Reece's. And what we're largely looking at is a starting point of the organization as a whole. So if it's a very kind of previously commercialized technology that's been around for a while, operating at a very small scale, but been operating for a while in a completely different industry. Just kind of as an example, we've actually financed a single run organization, a shoemaker who made shoes in his basement and wanted to purchase a more efficient, I think, sole kind of flattening machine of some sort. And that was a $20,000 loan to an individual who was making shoes on an ongoing basis, but he'd been doing so for a while. But kind of back to your point, if there's an organization a small business that's been running for a long time and has kind of a proof of concept there, but they've gotten to a point where they're conceptualizing a new technology and looking to scale maybe a new facility, a new technology of some sort, that's definitely kind of an area that we fit in quite nicely, especially when we're talking about anything to do with asset purchases, assets, improvement of any sort. Debt often fits quite nicely into those types of projects.
Okay. I do actually have a question from the audience. It is directed to Jen. And question is, could you say more about the Ocean Supercluster support for training? This company is having to bring in talent from overseas for a skill set that's unavailable in Canada. So they want to see if there's an opportunity to train here locally and build up the capacity locally. But they're pre-revenue, so it's difficult. And is there an opportunity to, I guess, scale the ecosystem or bring a way to increase potential training opportunities here locally and build up the economy and workforce locally?
It's a great question, and without knowing exactly what it is that you're working in, the short answer is let's explore. We are really focused on the long-term development and training. Part of it is around lack of awareness of ocean. And I didn't grow up near the ocean. I didn't really think about it. I saw it once when I was 6 and again when I was 20. So part of what we're trying to do is education and awareness of the ocean sector in general among youth and other training and supports. And some of it also is programmatic training. So we're exploring AI programs and other elements. And I think this is one of those things where bringing forward ideas and suggestions. We also have an innovation ecosystem program. And so with all of our investments in industry projects, those industry companies also make an investment into our ecosystem. And so it's beautiful part is that we have companies, we invest in them, they invest in our ecosystem, and then we can create great programming and content. And some of those content includes things like our Two-Eyed Scene initiative and Students on Ice and some other talent programs. So the short answer would be reach out and we can talk. But some of this is a long-term trajectory. We needed to start training people 15 years ago on certain things for us to get to where we are today. So there isn't always an immediate solution. The other piece is maybe there's a program that we need to think about as an ocean sector that helps address issues like this. What is the way that we can help facilitate and support trying to find some of those skill sets outside of Canada that can temporarily help? And maybe there is something that collectively we can get together on. And Jason, maybe that'll be a follow-up conversation for us after this. So hopefully that's not really the answer you're looking for, but I think maybe we can start talking about that specifically.
But I think it shows that there's that desire to build that. I mean, yes, it has to be in a strategic area, but I think there's the possibility we want to do that. We want to build the talent pool so we can do a lot more of that stuff in Canada. So I think it probably answers that question that yes, there is the scope to do that. On leading that, and it's sort of leading towards more, Todd mentioned during his presentation about, or one of the questions about social acceptance. And one of the things in British Columbia specifically is that we're a bit of a tourist hotspot. Is there possibility in your minds of using that tourism or ecotourism to really raise the profile of innovation and blue technology and blue economy? And is that something that can be considered as part of building out the, I guess, what's the word, getting support to fund ecotourism as a way of building that social acceptance? I know that's a hard question for everyone to answer. I'm going to take, Reece is probably going to say depends. But maybe Todd, seeing you talked about social acceptance, so I'll pass it to you.
I think anytime you can use a real example to, use ecotourism, which I'm not an expert on at all, but using something like that as a tangible example to bring people along, right? So from my perspective, it's identifying a company with partners and funding that CIC is also a part of, and using that as a practical example in a real, and then to slow down and methodically go through, like, to structure things through stage gates where you can really bring along awareness and social acceptance along with data proving all of that out to provide that confidence, right? If we go slow together, we're likely to get somewhere faster as a result. And that's kind of our mental model on how do we provide confidence and credibility for all of us as we continue to expand the solutions in this space will be really keen to our future, really important to our future success. So that's a bit of the thinking that we have at the Center for Innovation and Clean Energy. Maybe
Blake, can you answer this? Does this fit into? It's a bit of a long bow to draw. Yeah, that does it fit into that mandate about UN sustainability goals about raising awareness of sustainable innovation and funding? Is that a potential fund for ecotourism operations?
Yeah, so we've actually funded a few ecotourism projects over the years, so definitely relevant. Where we have actually, I'll answer this in two ways. One, kind of back to the previous question about scaling. I think that's a great example. An ecotourism business might not be something that's scalable like a unicorn or something might be, or a software-based organization would be. Whereas, but that's not to say that we wouldn't be interested. We're much less focused on scalability, much more focused on sustainability, both on the environmental and social side, but also on the financial side. So ecotourism is a great example of an area that we work in somewhat often. And the project examples that we've done usually come in with helping these ecotourism organizations in a sustainable fashion. So that could be energy efficiency. That could be projects kind of on the off-grid side of things, energy generation, many different types of projects within this group of ecotourism, but it's definitely of interest. We're actually looking into one out here right now. So definitely an interesting area.
Reece, is it? Are we going to get more than depends on it, or is it?
Well, I'm not local to the area either, so I don't know if I should be saying anything about tourism industry. No, I think everyone kind of covered it.
Yeah. Got another question coming in from the audience. Do any of your organizations bring in outside consulting companies or assist companies with scaling? So the audience member is a member of a strategic consulting company that specializes in companies scaling quickly, and whether or not that's something that your organizations do bring in or do rely on to help scale the companies you're interested in investing in. Jen, do you want to have a go at this one?
We don't, because our goal is to invest in the projects that are led by the people who should have they bring forward an idea. They themselves are going to execute because we need them to have the ownership of the delivery. If they decided to bring that as part of their project, absolutely, that's great. I think one of the other areas where this sometimes might happen is the NRC IRAP program. I think people have ITAs that work with them as their companies are growing, and those ITAs are very experienced, have themselves and have a great network. And this might be something that they themselves too might have the opportunity and funds to invest in, but it is currently not something that we support directly.
Thank you. Todd, is it something that CIC does?
Yeah, similar to Jennifer's response. So it's not something we do directly. We fund companies directly, and so if they already have somebody that's part of their partnership, we'd look at that. Obviously, there's also lots of different accelerator type organizations that exist to give you that capacity you need, and so if you work for that consulting company, being on the radar of those entities that kind of collaborate that in Canada would be a good path to get linked into some of them. But yeah, when we see kind of an obvious kind of weakness in our review of proponents and in making our investment decisions, we think around what are the gaps and risks, or what are the blind spots maybe that the current leadership team might have that might need some capacity in. We don't provide that directly, but those are very informed decisions we make and very healthy conversations we have with proponents, either if it's a positive investment decision or what it would take for it to be a different decision in the future around these are some of the gaps we see. But again, there's a lot of different pieces that exist in this ecosystem, I think, to support people with that skill set. And so it's figuring out if you're bringing that, there's ways to get involved. And if you need that, there's a lot out there, but it's not something we do specifically at CIC.
Okay, I might take that sort of thread and go to one of the questions I said I'd prepare you guys with, and that is, what are the key attributes that funding groups like yourselves or funding investment groups look for in applications, and how do they differ against, we've talked about dilutive, non-dilutive, and that's sort of a segue out from, having that consulting experience. So Reece, can I throw this one to you to start with?
Sure. I'll list off a bunch and then I'll come back to number one. So team, tech, TAM. I like things. Alliteration makes it easy. So team, tech, TAM, traction, and timing are my 5 T's that I think I look for usually. And then it comes all back to the team. Like if the team is stellar, if I have a feeling like I really want to work with these people, or could I see myself working for these people? Like, even though I'm investing on behalf of Propeller, it's like, are these stellar leaders that I want to spend my time with? Because it is a long-term relationship. You know, if we're investing in your early round, we're going to be with you for a few years at least, if not like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. These ventures can take a long time. And so it comes down to people. You want to invest in good people with good intentions, with integrity, who are building right, both for people and planet. And so that's a big piece of it. And then does that team match the problem? Does their tech or product or solution or innovation address the problem? Is the market large enough for us? Like, we are a venture fund. While I wish I could support lots of the amazing founders that we see who are doing interesting innovations at all scales of entrepreneurial activity, we're a venture fund. We have a venture timeline. We're seeking venture returns. It's part of our whole thesis and what our LPs expect. And so we need to see a large enough market that says this is a breakout investment. You want to see some traction. You know, we can meet a founder early on in their journey, but ideally they're making some progress towards what they're doing. And then there's also a timing thing. Like, is the timing right for this solution for the world at this time? Is the regulatory framework happening? Are they on it? Because sometimes someone has done something. Like, there's a lot of times in VC, oh, I saw this idea 5 years ago. It's like, well, you know what? 5 years ago, the world was very different. Now with the climate crisis, on our doorstep here presently, it might mean that some of the solutions that are coming forward are maybe even a couple minutes late. Wish people are wishing they had invested 5 years ago, but now the timing is right. So that's kind of my broad framework.
Okay. Blake, you talked about in your presentation about having those recurring revenues, but what other than that do you like to see in the applications that you see in the successful applications, I should say?
Yeah, so I don't have a fun little 5 T's or 4 S's or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, the big one, of course, the first step is, as I said, they fall under, or they contribute to, the Sustainable Development Goals. But beyond that, we have 5 different categories, we call them, of investment areas. And in each of those, we've defined somewhat of a theory of change or a goal for how we want those industries to progress and improve. So if this project will fit into one of those categories, as well as with the SDGs, that's the starting point. The second piece, and I think the biggest thing that we often have organizations that we have to turn away, is they're coming for funding, just period, not funding for something. So when we're looking at debt, again, it's not like an investment into the company to grow it from A to B. It's an investment into for equipment finance. It's an investment for a bridge between now and getting a new source of capital injected into the company. There's many different use cases, but the best thing you can do when applying with Goparity is to be prepared with kind of a funding use and have worked in, this funding is going to be used for this. And the best case scenario is if there is then revenue coming out of that purchase or use of funds, because then that pays back itself in the best case scenario.
Todd, what does CICE look for in the applications?
So everything that's raised are the colorful conversations we have when we're reviewing. So those are all valuable points. Our rules are really, and we try to bend all rules that we have, but BC based right now, that's our current mandate. It has to be innovation. So it has to be, can't be implementation of something that already exists. We're really looking for innovation. Again, I said 4 to 9, but really something proven that is that's trying to scale. And in our 4 broad areas is really the where the theme is. So innovation based in BC across those 4 areas. And then that's the highest level. And then we go into the next level and we have lots of discussions about the strength of the team. What are the risks they see? What are the risks they don't? Do they? And so sometimes when we make approvals, we make some things conditional, like once we understand your path to regulatory better, or your ability to get more funding. Sometimes people come to us and they don't have other sources of funding, and we think, you're a great idea. We believe in you. We believe in this idea. Go out and tell everyone CICE is willing to fund you, right? And then use that to get other sources of funding in, knowing that we've done a lot of due diligence behind the scenes to get to this decision point, but we do not fund 100% of what we like to fund maybe up to 50% at times, but we'd like to see other sources of funding, and that's part of the review we do as well. So a little bit more, but again, these broad discussions around the overall envelope are, again, what is fascinating about what innovators are putting together and ideas and again, solutions. So it's great.
Jen, do you want to add anything from the Supercluster?
I think Todd and I are in similar camps, but I think one other thing for people to realize in companies, when we do calls for concepts, and that's because it's streamlined, it's effective, it's efficient. Sometimes people have a hard time articulating their problem, the solution, and what they're doing. And they have a great proposal, but because you have external assessors who don't necessarily fully know everything about what they're talking about, it doesn't doesn't go through. And so part of it too is taking that step back and thinking you're educating someone about what you're an expert in. And as a founders, they're not always good at explaining some of the things that other people don't know. And so learning to get good at that, I think, is really important. Another thing is sometimes I think companies forget, when you deal with someone like Todd and myself, we're investing in you. This is non-dilutive. There's work that's required. So you still need to do regular due diligence. You need to be prepared to be able to give us financial statements and background and lots of disclosures. And you need to have a really good work plan and project schedule and be able to report back on KPIs and capabilities. Otherwise, we don't really know if you've been successful and should continue to invest in you. And I think sometimes people think that money is money and they get it and they get to walk away. There still is a bit of work involved for us to invest in you. And so I think, being mindful of how to function with different organizations and being responsive and being able to keep really good records and project management. I'd say the other attribute is be a good project manager somehow in your company.
Perfect. Thank you.
I completely agree. Thank you. I completely agree. Thank you.
I got one, just considering time, it's 2 minutes to go. So I've just got one quick question from the audience. It'll be maybe a quick question. It's regarding about return on investment timeframes for hard tech companies. Is there a fixed timeline that your organizations are looking for an ROI, or is it a range? Maybe Blake, let's start with you in terms of paying that debt back.
Yeah, quick and easy. We do 1 to 8 year term loans. Usually it's monthly repayments. Part of that is interest and part of that is the capital that's been invested. Yeah, I mean, there's some rare cases where we've done longer terms, but in most, again, based off that project, usually the payback starts pretty soon after we invest that capital, with some room for grace periods, up to a year in some cases.
Okay. Reece, is there any magical range for you guys?
Venture wants everything to go fast, so the sooner the better is fantastic, but within the realm of reality, but within the fund timeline, venture, like I said before, our fund is 12-year length, and we're a year into it, so we've got 11 years essentially on our clock. We can extend, most funds can extend if they have to, or figure out a way to do something if it's taken a little longer, but that's kind of we're trying to keep it within that timeline.
Perfect. Todd, Jennifer, anything from you guys?
Commercialization, 5 years. We'd like to see real growth, essentially.
Okay. Probably the same, Todd? Similar?
Yeah, similar. We have our initial fund, we want to see results within that time horizon too. So we want to see tangible results by 2026 at this point. But even earlier, kind of on a 24-month progress, we want to see, again, that milestone slicing on progress towards commercialization. Perfect.
Thanks, guys. We're running over time. I really appreciate you giving up your time for today. I think it's been fantastic to meet you all, and I'm hoping some people on the audience got some interesting information to probably come back to you with. Again, Reece Pacheco from Propeller, Todd Sayers from BC Centre for Innovative Clean Energy, Jen LaPlante from the Ocean Supercluster, and Blake Bunting from Goparity. Thanks, everyone. That's the end of today's session. It will be posted live on our website. If you've got any more questions, get in contact with Coast and look at the information on our website at www.canadacoast.ca. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.